The horse saw it all, every harsh insult, every hidden tear that 8-year-old Clementine Shaw tried to bury behind the barn walls. But what Thunder did that morning would leave an entire town speechless, proving that sometimes, animals have a keener sense of justice than people ever will. As dawn quietly stretched over Copper Ridge, Clementine crept toward the stable, her left cheek still stinging from yesterday's punishment. Magdalena had hit her again, this time for nothing more than dropping a plate. The little girl's bare feet made no sound as they padded across the dusty ground, bringing her closer to Thunder's stall, the only place in the world where she felt safe. Thunder, sensing her presence, lifted his great black head before she even reached him. His deep, dark eyes seemed to study every bruise, every mark that cruelty had etched into the child's fragile skin. Clementine pressed her face into the warmth of his neck, inhaling the comforting mix of hay and leather that had become her only refuge. "She says I'm worthless," Clementine murmured into his mane. "Says Papa should have left me at the orphanage like Mama wanted, before she died." Thunder let out a low, soft nicker, almost like he was rejecting every toxic word Magdalena had poisoned her with. From the house, Magdalena's familiar bark echoed, calling for breakfast preparations. Clementine's stomach twisted in dread. Her stepmother would be waiting, spoon in hand, ready to find fault with whatever she did. There was something almost gleeful in the way Magdalena seemed to feed on Clementine's fear every morning. Thunder pawed the ground anxiously, his ears flattening in the direction of the house. He had been silently watching this same painful pattern unfold for months. A child living in fear. A woman ruled by cruelty. And a man who was never there. Deep within the stallion's chest, something ancient and instinctual had begun to stir, something protective, something far beyond training or domestication. As Clementine hesitated, then turned toward the house, Thunder kept his gaze locked on her small, retreating figure. His nostrils flared, catching the sharp scent of her fear. Every muscle under his dark, sleek coat grew taut. But what he sensed this time was different. It was more than routine punishment. It was darker, more dangerous. This morning, Magdalena wasn't planning just another beating. She had something worse in mind, something that would push the stallion past any limit he had ever known. From the kitchen window, Magdalena Pierce watched. Her thin lips curled into a bitter smile as Clementine drew closer. Today was going to be different. Today, she intended to crush whatever spirit the girl had left. Her fingers wrapped tightly around the wooden spoon, the same one she'd already worn through 3 times that summer. But today, hitting the girl wouldn't be enough. Clementine still had that spark, still found strength in that damned horse. And it gnawed at Magdalena. Every time she saw Zeke's soft gaze when he looked at his daughter, jealousy burned through her like acid. "That ends today." "About time," she snapped as Clementine stepped through the doorway. "The eggs are cold because you're lazy." The little girl rushed to the stove. Her hands trembled as she reached for the iron skillet. One plate shifted, not much, just enough for an egg to slide dangerously close to the edge. But that small mistake was all it took. Magdalena struck without hesitation. The wooden spoon cracked across Clementine's knuckles, the sharp sound slicing through the still air of the kitchen. The child clenched her jaw, swallowing the pain, her eyes flooding with tears she had long ago learned not to shed in front of her stepmother. "Worthless," Magdalena spat. "Just like your dead mother." Those words landed heavier than any blow ever could. "You know what I think?" she said with venom. "I think that damn horse of yours needs to learn a lesson too." Clementine's head snapped up, her eyes wide with panic. "No, please, Thunder didn't do anything," she begged. But Magdalena wasn't listening. "That beast's been looking at me like he's better than me. Like he's judging me with those demon eyes," she sneered. "Maybe a proper beating will teach you both your place." Outside the kitchen window, Thunder stood eerily still, his ears forward, locked onto every word spilling from the house. His tail flicked once, then again, an unmistakable warning sign to anyone who knew horses. Magdalena reached for the heavy leather strap hanging by the door, the same one she used when the spoon wasn't enough. "Out," she ordered coldly. "Time you both learned what happens to creatures that forget where they stand." But as they stepped into the early light, neither Magdalena nor Clementine noticed what had shifted in Thunder. His head was lowered. One hoof scraped the ground. His breath came heavy, not calm, but wild. It was the sound of something ancient awakening. Vengeance. Protection. Loyalty that couldn't be broken. The leather strap hissed through the air, aimed not at Clementine, but at Thunder. Magdalena had decided to hurt the girl in the cruelest way imaginable, by attacking the one creature she loved most. But the blow never landed. Thunder's massive head snapped like lightning. His jaws clamped down on the strap with bone-crushing strength. With one violent jerk, he tore it from her grip and sent it flying into the dust. Magdalena staggered back, her face strained of color. In all her years of breaking people and bending spirits, she had never witnessed anything like this, an animal so purposeful and defiant. Thunder's dark eyes fixed on her, full of intelligence and fury, and something else that made her shiver, judgment. "You devil horse!" she shrieked, grabbing a broken fence post nearby. "I'll show you what happens when you challenge me." But before she could raise the makeshift weapon, Thunder stepped forward, not with fear, not to retreat, but with the slow, deliberate advance of a predator. His ears were pinned flat. His nostrils flared. And as the morning sun glinted off his jet-black coat, every muscle in his massive body flexed like a loaded spring ready to explode. Clementine pressed herself against the barn wall, caught in a whirlwind of fear and awe. She had never seen Thunder like this before, not the gentle giant she knew, but a creature transformed by fury and love. His breath came in deep, controlled bursts, like war drums pounding into the silence. Magdalena swung the post with everything she had. Thunder dodged it like it was nothing. Despite his size, he moved with impossible grace and precision. The wooden post shattered against the barn wall, missing Thunder's head by just a heartbeat. "What in God's name is going on out here?" The voice sliced through the tension like a blade through silk. Boone Callahan, the town sheriff, sat atop his horse at the edge of the property, drawn by the rising noise of conflict. His seasoned eyes quickly swept over the scene. There stood a trembling child, a furious woman clutching a broken stick, and a black stallion standing guard between them like a wall made of muscle and judgment. "Sheriff Callahan!" Magdalena's tone turned sweet in an instant, but her trembling hands betrayed her. "Oh, thank heavens you came! That animal went wild. He attacked me while I was just trying to do my chores." But Boone wasn't buying it. His eyes had already landed on the leather strap tossed aside in the dirt. He'd caught sight of the dark bruises on Clementine's small arms. And he noticed how the girl instinctively moved closer to the horse, not her stepmother. Thunder turned his head toward the sheriff but didn't move his body an inch. His message couldn't have been clearer. This was his ground. And the girl? She was under his protection. Whatever the sheriff said next would decide whether this ended in blood or justice. Sheriff Boone Callahan had seen his share of range wars, broken men, and the worst parts of human nature. He knew when a lie was dressed up like truth. And right now, the truth was carved into every tight line of Thunder's stance, echoed in every wince from Clementine's body, and dripping from the false sweetness in Magdalena's shaking voice. "Ma'am," Boone said slowly, his voice lined with 20 years of authority, "I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the child." Magdalena's innocent act began to falter. "She's my stepdaughter," she snapped. "I have every right to discipline her how I see fit. And that animal? He's dangerous. Just look at the way he's acting." But Thunder wasn't acting. He wasn't threatening. The stallion stood perfectly still, calm but alert. His deep, focused gaze settled on Boone with a clarity that unsettled the sheriff. This wasn't some crazed beast. This was a guardian who'd been pushed too far. "Clementine," Boone said gently as he slid from his saddle with steady, careful movements. "Can you tell me what happened here?" The girl's voice barely registered above a whisper. "She was going to hit Thunder. Like she hits me. But he stopped her." Magdalena's expression twisted in fury. "That child lies through her teeth. I've never touched her, not once. Zeke's going to hear about this. I swear." "Is that so?" Boone's tone dropped low, dangerous. He bent and picked up the leather strap from the dirt. The thing was worn smooth, darkened by stains that told their own story. "This strap looks like it's been well used," he said flatly. At that, Thunder took a single step toward Magdalena. She stumbled backward, so fast she nearly fell. The stallion's body said what his mouth could not. He was finished holding back. "That horse is going to kill someone!" Magdalena shrieked. "You have to shoot him before he hurts somebody." But Boone's face turned to stone. Years of enforcing the law had taught him how to read people, like most folks read signs on the trail. The bruises on Clementine's arms didn't come from accidents. The fear in her eyes wasn't the result of a dangerous animal. It came from the woman standing in front of him. A woman who had spent years quietly crushing a child's spirit. "The only innocent beings I see here," Boone said as his fingers settled on his gun belt, "are this little girl, and that horse." Thunder seemed to sense the shift, his ears lifting slightly, his stance relaxing just a touch as if recognizing an ally in Boone. Still, he didn't budge from his place between Clementine and Magdalena. "Now, Mrs. Pierce," Boone continued, his voice taking on the gravity of a final verdict, "you're going to walk real slow back to that house while I have a word with Miss Clementine. And if you so much as glare at this child or her horse again—" He didn't need to finish. The unspoken threat hung in the air, heavy as a noose. Magdalena's skin had gone ghost white. But what happened next would push every law, every rule, every oath Boone had ever sworn to its limit. Magdalena's desperation erupted into fury. As she backed toward the porch, her eyes locked onto Zeke's hunting rifle, hanging just inside the kitchen. If she couldn't control the outcome, she'd bring it to an end herself. "That monster's going to kill someone!" she screamed, lunging for the gun. "If no one stops him, he'll kill us all!" Thunder's head jerked toward the house. He didn't need to see the weapon, he felt the shift, smelled the danger. This wasn't fear. It was instinct. The kind that gets passed down from generations of battle-tested ancestors. Boone's hand moved fast. In one smooth motion, his revolver was out. But Magdalena had already made it through the door. "Down!" he shouted to Clementine. But the girl was paralyzed, frozen against Thunder's side. Then the rifle appeared. Its barrel pointed straight at Thunder's broad chest. Magdalena's face twisted with hate built over years, her finger tightening on the trigger. "This ends now. And if you were in Boone's place, what would you do? Shoot a woman to protect a horse? Risk everything for justice? Or let that animal die and walk away clean? Tell me in the comments, because what Boone chose would haunt him for the rest of his life." Boone fired first. The report of his gun shattered the morning calm. Magdalena shrieked in pain as the bullet slammed into the rifle stock, splintering it in her hands. Wood and metal clattered to the floor while she clutched her palms in agony. But Thunder wasn't finished. The stallion had seen this woman torment his girl for the last time. With a piercing cry, half war cry, half roar, he lunged toward the house. His hooves landed on the porch with thunderous force, shattering the planks beneath him. He reared high, powerful legs churning the air as he loomed in the doorway. Magdalena stumbled back, crashing into the table as 1,000 pounds of rage bore down on her. Thunder's front hooves slammed down inches from her face. Hot breath blasted her skin as he hovered above her, not just a horse now, but something mythic. A creature of judgment. "Please," she whimpered, all the venom in her gone. "Please, don't let him hurt me." But Thunder didn't move. He stared straight into her soul. And for one long, paralyzing moment, Magdalena saw herself the way he had always seen her. A predator. A coward. A tormentor of the innocent. But Thunder? He wasn't like her. He was stronger than vengeance. With a final snort, the stallion stepped back. His message was clear. Real justice doesn't need blood to make itself known. Sometimes, the only way to humble a predator is for them to finally know what it feels like to be hunted. If this story has gripped you the way it gripped us, and you want to see how the unbreakable bond between Thunder and Clementine shapes both their futures, go ahead and subscribe. What happens next will stay with you. As the dust settled and silence wrapped around the yard, Sheriff Boone stood still, haunted. He just witnessed something that shook his understanding of justice, of protection, and of the mysterious ties that bind living beings together. Thunder slowly backed out of the kitchen, his steps deliberate, careful not to crush the broken glass and splintered wood beneath him. The stallion had made his point without shedding a drop of blood. But the memory of Magdalena's terror, that would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. Clementine stood outside, tears streaming down her face, not out of fear, but from a wave of overwhelming relief. For the first time in 2 long years, she felt safe. Thunder lowered his head and gently pressed it against her shoulder. The fearsome protector faded, revealing the gentle soul she had always known and loved. Sheriff Boone slid his weapon back into its holster, though his fingers still trembled slightly. In 2 decades on the job, He'd seen shootouts, tragedies, and wild justice, but nothing like this. A horse who understood right and wrong better than most men. And a little girl who had found salvation in the last place anyone would have looked. Mrs. Pierce, Boone called toward the house, voice calm but edged with finality. You're going to pack up and leave Copper Ridge today. Magdalena pulled herself off the floor, pale, shaking, tears streaking her cheeks. You can't force me to go, she snapped. This is my home. Zeke is my husband. Boone's jaw tightened. Zeke's a decent man. But he trusted the wrong woman. And when he comes home from the mines tonight, he's going to learn who he's really married to. Boone pulled a small notebook from his vest pocket and opened it with grim purpose. I'll be documenting every bruise on this child's skin. Every mark you left. Thunder moved beside Clementine, his presence like armor. His eyes stayed fixed on Magdalena, watching every twitch, every movement, ready to act again if she so much as thought about hurting his girl. The stage leaves for Denver at sunset, Boone said. I suggest you be on it. Because if you ever show your face around this child or that horse again, what happened here today will look like mercy. There was fire behind Magdalena's eyes, but her rage was laced with fear. She hadn't understood the power of the bond she was up against. She hadn't counted on a horse orchestrating her downfall with more strategy than any human. As she staggered toward the bedroom to pack, Clementine finally found her voice. What happens when Papa gets home? Will he believe me? Boone knelt beside her, his expression softer now. Your father loves you, he said gently. And once he sees what's been done, once he understands what Thunder did to protect you. The sheriff glanced at the stallion nuzzling the girl's hair like it was spun gold. He'll understand that sometimes the truest heart doesn't beat in a man's chest. But just as a sense of peace began to return, neither Boone nor Clementine noticed a flicker of cold, calculating hatred that passed across Magdalena's face as she disappeared into the house. The woman who had tormented a child for 2 years wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. Moments later, crashing sounds erupted from the house. Magdalena was tearing through it in a blind rage, breaking plates, smashing mirrors, even destroying what little Clementine owned. But it wasn't about the furniture. It wasn't about dishes. It was about revenge. From the bedroom window, Magdalena watched Thunder grazing peacefully beside Clementine in the golden light. The sight twisted something inside her, something dark and poisonous. If she couldn't hurt the living, she'd go after what they loved. Beneath her bed sat a small glass bottle, rat poison. Arsenic, set aside for the mice in the grain shed. More than enough to kill a horse, and with it, the heart of the child who loved him. One last supper for that devil, she whispered as she slipped the bottle into her dress. Sheriff Boone was distracted by the well, scribbling in his report. Clementine was picking wildflowers by the creek. It was the perfect window for one final act of cruelty. Magdalena crept toward the stable, silent as a shadow. Thunder's feed bucket hung in its usual place, half full of grain. Her hand trembled as she uncorked the bottle. The powder inside shimmered white in the light, like snow, but lethal. But Thunder was watching. His head snapped up, nostrils flaring. He caught it immediately, a scent that didn't belong. Sharp. Chemical. Wrong. His ears twitched forward. He saw her by the feed. He didn't need logic. He understood patterns. Every time Magdalena had been cornered, her cruelty evolved into something worse. The stallion moved like a shadow, silent and swift. Magdalena, lost in her hatred, didn't hear him approach. She didn't even sense his presence until warm breath grazed the back of her neck. She spun around, startled. The bottle slipped from her fingers and shattered against the stable wall. The white poison exploded across the floor like a deadly snowfall. Thunder rose up, his front hooves slicing the air inches from her face. This time, there was no hesitation in his eyes. No gentleness. She had crossed a line that even a protector couldn't forgive. She tried to poison the very creature that had shown her mercy. Thunder's cry of rage split the valley, primal, wild, furious. Boone dropped his pen and sprinted toward the stable, dread pressing hard against his ribs. What he saw when he reached the doorway would stay with him forever. Magdalena, torn and trembling, cowered in the corner like a trapped animal. Thunder towered above the shattered glass, pawing at the powder as if to bury it. He tried to kill her, Clementine said from the doorway, her voice full of clarity and horror. She tried to poison Thunder. Boone's jaw tightened. He looked at the shards, the scattered poison, the shattered woman, and saw the truth for what it was. "Mrs. Pierce," he said, voice like iron, "you're under arrest for attempted animal cruelty and for endangering a child." "You can't prove it," she screeched. But even she knew the lie was dead. The evidence was all around her. And the truth was standing at Thunder's side, with tear-stained cheeks and a heart too strong to break. As Boone clamped iron cuffs around her wrists, a sound rose in the distance. Hoofbeats. Fast. Familiar. Zeke Shaw rode up, covered in cold dust, exhaustion in his eyes, until he saw the chaos on his land. "What the hell happened here?" he demanded, leaping off his horse. Boone pulled him aside and spoke low, steady, and serious. He told Zeke everything. What he saw. What he knew. What she'd done. With every word, Zeke's face went white. His hands began to tremble. Then his gaze shifted toward Clementine. Thunder stood beside her like a living wall. His eyes met Zeke's, sharp and unwavering, measuring him, judging him. Was this man worthy of the girl he had failed to protect? "Clementine," Zeke said, dropping to his knees in front of her. "My girl. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't see." He choked on his words as he looked at the bruises, at the fear still hiding behind her tears. "Thunder saved me, Papa," Clementine whispered. "He always has." Zeke reached out, hand shaking, and laid it gently against the stallion's neck. Thunder didn't flinch. He allowed it. It was a beginning. "Then I owe this horse more than I could ever repay," Zeke said quietly. As Boone led Magdalena away in chains, her furious screams echoing across the valley, peace finally returned to the Shaw home. But what Thunder had done, what he had been, was so much more than just protection. He had uncovered truth. He had delivered justice. He had proven that courage sometimes comes with hooves and a mane. Years later, long after Thunder's coat had faded to gray and Clementine had grown into a woman, she would still tell the story. The story of a horse who saw everything, who felt everything, and who chose love over fear. The one who stood for her when no one else would. If you've been moved by this story, and want to hear more tales of loyalty, courage, and the kind of love that defies understanding, don't forget to subscribe. We've got many more waiting. Because sometimes the greatest hearts beat in chests that were never human to begin with. And now, click the next video on your screen to hear a story even more powerful than this one. A twist so unforgettable, you'll feel it long after the last word is spoken.